matches of Nikola, but every Sunday he has a match where he has really strong opponents and tries to avoid adoption. As you know, in chess, adoption is not as wholesome as in real life. You don't want to be adopted at chess because that means you lose 10 games in a row.
Unless you're Alessia Santaramo, in which case, when you get adopted, you ask for a Ferrari.
Yeah, Alessia has amazing negotiation skills when it comes to chess matches.
All right, we are actually, the layout is good to go. I hope you guys can hear us. Thank you for joining us. And oh no, Eliv, yes, that's one of those my subscriber thingies. But it's very good to see you here. Okay, so Anna.
I need to invite you to an analysis board, and
Yes.
then we can get started.
Thank
Tell
you.
us about the next matches in the meantime, and the most recent ones in terms of the
Okay,
results.
well, I'm playing WGM Adriana Nikolova on this coming Sunday at noon, New York time. And hey, Templar Killer 500, it's very good to see you. And then looks like Alessia wants to have another attempt to adopt me. So that's on the 25th. And then I'm playing Ellen Nielsen on the November 1st. So.
That sounds like a very exciting schedule that you have with strong opponents. So Adriana Nikolova is your first opponent,
Correct.
and then Alessia
Yes.
the following Sunday.
Yeah. So Anna, how have you been doing? I'm watching your streams, and you are streaming more and more. I know you had a 15-hour stream.
Yeah, it was almost 15 hours. I think it was 8 hours in a row, and then I came back for the Among Us Ladies Night, which was a lot of fun too. But a long day in the office. I do enjoy a lot streaming. I think the community is just a very, very
Oh,
wholesome, positive space that always makes me want to come back and spend time with my community.
wonderful. Okay, so you guys, you're familiar with this. Basically, this is a time when Anna tortures me. In other words, comes up with some secret games that I'm supposed to figure out how very strong grandmasters or world champions from the past played, and she never tells me what I'm supposed to expect. So, what do we have today?
For today, we have another difficult game, as you could expect. This is between two of the top grandmasters of the present time, because we have also taken the travel. We have also taken plenty of travel trips to the past with our time machine. We have observed games of former world champions, and talked about chess history a lot. Nikola knows a lot about chess history, but for today, I thought, because Norway Chess is one of the few tournaments this year that is being held, I was looking at which players to show, and initially I was tempted to look for an Ali Reza Firouzja game, but then while I was searching, I also looked at Grishuk games, and I ended up picking Grishuk for today against Fabiano Caruana. So it's gonna be a Caruana Grishuk game. They have played plenty of times. I'm not gonna say yet which year, but it's one of the more recent games they've played against each other. If you are ready, Nikola.
Yeah, I'm ready, and I have a question for Kahraman Katak, who is basically asking, "Who am I?" And that's a very tough question. I'm basically a chess. I used to play chess competitively in my teens, which was a few lifetimes ago. And then at the tender age of 51 or 52, which was last year, I decided that I want to kind of return and enjoy chess again after a small hiatus of 35 years. So here I am, and we'll see where it goes.
You have improved a lot, Nikola,
Thank you.
and that was already before the session, so I cannot take any credit
No,
for
you
it. But
deserve
Nikola is a strong player.
you deserve a credit. You deserve a lot of credit, Anna. This session's definitely helped me with my chess. So thank you.
Well, you were able to beat me even without the session. So imagine now. Imagine now. I'm gonna get adopted if I play against you.
No, you wouldn't. I actually tried to play an adoption match last Sunday, and that didn't go exactly the way as it was planned. That's number one. And number two, let me put it this way. Yes, you and I played, but we mostly played during these sessions when you are commentating and managing the chat and always running of time. So I'm not getting 100% international master honor, Rudolf, and I'm playing against you. I know that. So.
Well, thank you for making it seem like as if I could just easily beat you. But I think even if I give 100% effort and attention, it will still not be an easy game because you have
Thank
improved
you.
a lot.
I'll accept that, but thank you. All right. So anyway, and also a quick shout out to Turnip Swagger and to Dirkie again, who is always very happy to see the torture time. And so, what do we have today?
We're gonna start by just going through the opening moves because it's not our main focus, the opening stage of the games. I'm gonna start asking questions from the middle game, but for now, a question that I should ask to Nicola and to the viewers: if you guys play the gioco piano, that is the Italian,
I do.
Nicola, when it comes to openings, do you
I
play
do.
it with both colors, with white, with black, and what do you think of it as an opening?
I actually play this in my adoption matches. I don't play Jokopi. Okay, I actually play a different line. I castle after bishop c5, and then I play d4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a more direct approach.
A more direct approach, yes. Chesweep! Thank you for the raid for a party of 42. That's very greatly appreciated. Please, let's
Thank you
give a
so
shout
much.
out to Chesweep. I think it's Grandmaster Danish Borosh, who is who deserves a follow. If you guys do not already follow him, he has one of the most instructive streams on there. It's always interesting. Now, I'm actually familiar with this line. This is a line that actually I studied a little bit with Danya. This is, I prepared this for Grandmaster Anna Muzichuk to play against her and Dina Belenkaya. So I'm very familiar with these lines as a black.
Excellent. From Black's perspective,
Yes.
with the black pieces, it's Alexander Grishuk playing. But we will be looking at the game from both perspectives because there will be plenty of things to discuss. As for the setup and the opening, can you explain to the viewers who may not be that familiar with the Italian, what are some of the ideas in the Italian, the setup?
Okay, yeah. So basically the idea here is a black wants to play a6, and I'm gonna return a couple of moves if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So basically, if we get into this position, if white plays d3 in this position, black's plan is to play d6, a6, and h6 at some point. And then we draw the bishop on a7 for the simple reason that any kind of d4 thrust, it doesn't have a tempo against the bishop. So that leaves black with some options. Also, and this is a rule, any potential bishop g5 thrust can be parried by h6 and g5. But that's best done before black castles. But even if black castles, that's not necessarily an issue. So the long-term plan is for black to transition the knight from e7 to g6, and then potentially get to f4, and ultimately to push d5.
Yes.
So
very true.
Yeah. Anyway, that's obviously, telling this to you guys while it's different than actually playing it. God knows I've missed I lost quite a lot of games because I didn't play d5 at the right moment and so on and so forth, but that's the zen of the position.
Yeah. And also these bishop moves are tricky. Sometimes it's white who plays bishop e3, sometimes black. And it's always a question, do you want to take it? Will then white or black double their pawn structure? So will you take back with the pawn? In this case, it happened, the capture, and it means that now the structure changes.
yeah, but that pawn on e6, and this is answer a question. Sleeping Mishkin. I guess it's a Dostoevsky's character, Mishkin, I
Oh,
guess. So h6 rook e8 is the latest fashion in the theory because that allows black to take with the rook, but I think this is perfectly fine because realistically this reinforces an if d5 threat, f5 is controlled. I think it's subject to this debate whether these two pawns are actually a strength as a weakness.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yes, McDonald move knight e7 to g6. Yeah, that's fine. It's perfectly fine to open the G file by playing GF6. It's perfectly fine to play this. If we flip the board, I'm quite sure this position would be at least 20 of my one games.
Yeah, exactly. So it has its pros and cons, or the structural change. Usually the position is still roughly equal, whether white takes on e3, whether black takes, or both. b4 was played by Fabiano Caruana.
So this is Caruana versus Grishchuk.
Yes. What
Okay.
would you go for as black? So now we are already more in the middle game stage than an opening phase. Of course, this is still linked to the opening in the sense that you need to know what's the setup, what are the
Uh,
plans.
I actually, believe it or not, I'm pretty positive I had this position as black.
Amazing. What did you
Uh,
play?
I played knight e7.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's one of the ideas here, to
Yeah.
bring, as you said, the knight over to g6, hop onto the f4 square, and to execute that knight maneuver. What's the other way to do it?
You can also play knight h5, and then actually both knights at some point can go there. I had this position in my very last game in the match against Grandmaster Anna Muzichuk, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
almost positive, and I had a drawn position that of course I managed to lose in time Scrabble, and I'm pretty sure I had this against Jennifer Shahade as well. So yes, I'm familiar with this position.
Excellent. So both knight e7, knight g6, knight f4, or knight h5 immediately with the same idea, placing the knight on f4. What are some of the issues sometimes about the knight on h5? Is it an issue here?
The issue is that white normally can take on e5 and then on h5. The reason it cannot be done is because of this is a threat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so yeah.
So knight h5 is all right here, but we should always pay attention to that threat indeed, of the discovered attack. And after rook a2, white protecting the f2 pawn.
Caruana really like these interesting rook shifts. I have seen
Mm-hmm.
him play this. Yeah, okay.
Very true, very true. What do we do now?
I'm playing as black.
Yes.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to flip the board.
Yes, of course. It's a good idea. Mostly we'll be looking at it from black's perspective. Mostly.
It would be good if I knew how to do this.
Sleeping Mishkin, you suspect Grishchuk is already in time trouble at this point.
Yeah.
Could be.
All right. Yeah, okay. All right, so now obviously knight e5 is a threat, so we need to get that knight off f4, off h5. So,
Mm-hmm.
when we already did this, we can play knight f4. That's obviously the first candidate. Oh, not that. We can play. Hey, Laser Bazooka, thank you for the follow. Very greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Knight f4 is, I think, a perfectly fine move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we, it's possible, I would think that we can play this as kings, some sort of a strange King's Indian thing in which we have this pawn chain and then we
Mm-hmm.
can attack on king side.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, bishop is not on g7, but I would be happy to play that position as black. another option, well, we kind of need to move this knight immediately. So I think there is only one legitimate candidate move. The other is to return on f6, which is kind of defeats the purpose of the whole maneuver. So knight f4.
Yes, knight f4 is definitely one of the main candidate moves. And the other approach is if you want to make that move later. I think it's just a move order alteration. We should play queen e8 first because the queen is
Okay.
coming here anyway. But you can play knight f4 first, then bring the queen, and the queen can be brought whether
Yep.
from this diagonal or from f6. Usually it's still heading to g6. So both queen e8 and queen f6 are possible. Queen f6 does not protect the knight, but it does attack f2, so that renews the threat. And also the queen would be protecting the knight on h5.
Yeah.
So queen e8 or queen f6 and knight f4 are the main moves. He played
Yeah.
this first, and after knight a3, an interesting way to develop the knight. Where is that knight going? Well, this is the one square it can hop onto, or c2 e3 that way as well. But it's unlikely to place it here once the rook is on a2.
Well, I think the idea for this is for the knight to go to e3, but he doesn't want to block this rook from defending f2.
Yeah, so the rook is not blocked. If we had placed it on d2, this whole setup doesn't make sense. The rook is out of the game, and it also blocks the bishop, meaning that white does not have the chance of taking that knight on f4, and it will be a very strong attacking piece for black if the knight lands on f4. So not the most common way of developing, but here it makes sense that the knight is coming through the a3 square into the game. This is when Grishuk indeed played knight f4, and Karana took immediately. How do we take back?
A good question, actually. That's the problem is, however much I would really like to play this King's Indian style attack on the king side. In other words, put rook on f7 and bishop on a7 is well placed. White is going to count. If I take with a pawn, if black takes with a pawn, we need to evaluate the counter immediate d4.
Mm-hmm.
And then, thank you, Rollercoaster123. Thank you for the host. That's very greatly appreciated. Thank you. So it's that's somewhat unpleasant because then if white is allowed to push e5, then we end up with this pawn that's very badly placed, and this pawn on f4 is also misplaced, and we don't really have a pawn chain. So however much it hurts me to say this, I think taking with the rooks makes more sense. So yeah, let's... Hey Davina, it's very good to see you. Just a quick shout out to Davina, who is a fellow streamer, and it would be good if I could type. All right, so please give her a follow if you're not. She that. Oh God. All right, sorry, Davina. Davina already making fun of me that she and Kimi, I can never get their shout outs proper. Sorry about that. Anyway, taking with the rook, Anna, I think makes more sense.
Exactly. And that was the move of Grishuk for the reasons that you have mentioned. Very good. You need to keep the f file open, the rook active. As tempting as it is to have this pawn structure, to straighten the pawn structure, here it stops black's attack and gives a free hand for white to just keep going on the queen side, where it's already very advanced, and the center, as you are pointing out, d4, e5, b5, queen to b3, knight coming to c4, while black's attack is nowhere with the f file closed.
And we need to counter that attack. And funny thing is that here, knight on a3 is actually exquisitely well placed, and we need to play c5 or c6 to counter that threat. But by the time we move the knight on e7 and rook on c8, we don't have enough time. So yeah, okay.
Very good. Very good explanation. So rook takes f4 is the right move indeed, and that's what happened in the game.
Hey, Lali, my friend, it's very good to see you.
Mm.
But this is one of the very first EU-friendly streams. So,
Yes. And thank you, Nikola, for always adapting to my schedule in terms of which day, what time. Nikola is always ready to change his schedule and adapt it to mine. Thank you so much.
well, Anna has now become one of the top 3 or top 4, uh, most popular chess streamers on Twitch, and I'm very very happy to see that happen. And I did, and noon actually works for me because, as a matter of fact, I have a hard stop at 2, so I have another meeting. So this works out.
Sure, sure. I'm glad to hear that it works out. Well, really, thank you so much for being so
No,
flexible.
no, thank you. All right, so rook f4, and I don't necessarily dislike black's position here, Anna.
Why? What are the reasons that make you prefer this from white's perspective?
We're kind of um, let me put it this way. I've played this quite often, and this is a more comfortable setup. This is a reasonably comfortable setup. In other words, most of the goals in the opening that black needed to achieve has been achieved.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to putting queen on e8 is topical. Rook n4 is fine, but it kind of exerts pressure on this knight and on f2 because technically this knight is pinned. If I were to construct an ideal position for black here, all I would do is would transfer this knight from c6 to g6.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a plan on playing against put queen of f7 and then rook f8, and you have all sorts of threats. This bishop is pretty strong, and d4 is a threat, but we are well placed to exchange and then push e5.
Mm-hmm.
Or at some point even push d5 because this knight and the queen defend the pawn. And I've drawn more arrows than Hikaru. I apologize.
Hikaru could learn from you when it comes to drawing those arrows.
No. Hikaru is a
He's the OG.
Hikaru is a world champion in chess and super GM in chess and everything else. But when it comes to drawing arrows, he is not only a world champion, but he leaves everybody else in the dust. So
agreed, fully agreed. We can all take notes. We can all take notes from his arrows as well as his chess, of course. Very well done. Yes, that could be a setup. I think starting with knight f7 or any of knight e7 makes sense because that's where the knight is going regardless. So that's very flexible. Then you can still decide whether to place the queen on f7 or g6. Will be the queen that goes there, will be the knight that hops onto g6. Grishuk, interestingly, started with queen to g6, which makes it somewhat less flexible. But that states that he wants the queen there. Later, the knight will still come to e7. So interestingly, he played queen g6. After b5, you can simply play knight e7. He said, I have a pretty developing move that also attacks a knight. The knight on f3 is hanging, so he played rook a f8 first. And once the knight was protected, knight c d2. Now that a2 rook is a bit out of the game, it's not covering the f2 square anymore. This is when he moved the knight to e7. So different move order, but we could have arrived at this position without the tricky move order too. And d4. Your turn, Nikola. What do we do here? How do we react?
can I go and move? Let me just have some fun here.
Sure.
Well, he needed to move the knight. Yeah, okay, fine. I was wondering whether getting queen here would make sense, but no, that's too cute. That's too cute. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That was a threat, so d4 basically stops that, stops those ideas.
Okay.
How do we react to this pawn push? What's the threat and how can we deal with it?
Well, the threat is we don't want to sacrifice the pawn on e5, and I have to admit that defending the pawn on e5 is one of the trickiest aspects of this position from Black's standpoint, because you know it's usually beneficial for black to let white take on e5, but then how do you defend that pawn? I don't think we have any other option but to take, right?
Yeah, taking is one of the main options.
Yeah.
And if we don't want to take, if we don't want to take the pawn, then how can we make sure that we, well, it's gonna be double, I guess. So you mean that d takes is going to happen if we don't take d takes e5, d takes e5 will make these e pawns isolated, not just double but isolated.
Yeah, and white cannot immediately take it, but he can play knight c4, and then it's I think the paraphrase that the whole transaction is a little bit in white's favor because the queen is here, this is strong, knight c4 is strong, and white has improved his position. So all right, so taking is one of the options. I kind of like that option. Do we have any tactics? And the knight on f3 is overprotected. Sleeping Mishkin is saying to play queen h5, which is interesting. Playing something along the lines of looking at the potential pawn issues. Obviously we don't want to take this pawn for obvious reasons, because that opens up this rook. I really think that I don't think white wants to remain with isolated doubled pawns here, so it's either
yeah, the black shouldn't accept those.
Yeah, so we cannot do the counter thrust here because this is very dangerous and doesn't open the bishop. I'll be frank, Anna, this, to me, it looks like we almost have to take. And I'm quite, yeah.
I would feel the same way, that allowing d takes, even if the pawn is not hanging anymore, is a huge concession, because those pawns, just to show, like, even if we were to play this move or not, like just any move, why, as Nicola already said, you can't take immediately because f2 will be hanging, but this is not a temporary issue. This structure is here to stay forever. So if you allow it, it means that you're gonna spend the rest of the game trying to protect those pawns.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it surprised me a lot that Grishuk allowed it, because
Wow.
I thought the same, that this looks terrible, to accept for the rest of the game this is gonna be something that you need to take care of, and you always need to compensate for it with dynamic play, because if not, white is so much better because of the structure. So I'm not sure how good this decision is that he allows it. He played queen f6 and allowed it. I think it was way more natural, what you said, to take, and later you will see whether there's any pawn push that makes sense, whether e5, whether d5, whether c5. One way or the other, black will try to fight back in the center. But taking was, I think, the first step. So I think that was way more natural than what he did. Queen f6, I wouldn't have played this myself. Even if it's still about unclear, it doesn't give that much advantage to white, but the advantage is here to stay. The structure will be terrible.
Okay, well, Grishuk is a super GM and a perennial candidate for the world champion, and
yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, and also to mention that this was at the Grand Chess Tour Rapid and Blitz in Paris. I don't remember if this was the Rapid or Blitz game, But in either case, it's shorter time control. He probably wanted a more dynamic position for the fact that it's not classical.
Yeah. Okay.
D takes, and Karna took on a6. Grishuk takes back. I was not gonna ask that because it was rather obvious, but what's happening now after Queen e2? What do you
Okay.
think we should do?
I'm gonna troll a little bit here, and I'm gonna say that if Dina Belenkaya or Anna Muzichuk were playing this position, or even Karina Abratsumova, they would love this position for white.
Yeah.
And they would love it for the very simple reason that this is a very constant and perennial positional advantage for white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to find the tactics for Grishchuk to compensate here. And the only tactics here is to basically play against this f2 pawn. Because if we count pawn weaknesses, we are not going to be in good shape. So how can we do that? Obviously, this bishop cannot be any better placed than it is. We already have a very strong battery of the f-file, so I think getting the knight to somewhere in this direction is natural. The only problem we have is how do we respond to, well, this is two knights for the, that would be two knights for the rook, so white cannot play g3. So basically, I think the way to proceed in this position is to play something along these lines to undermine this knight here.
And you're not worried about the h6 pawn?
I'm frankly more... the a6 pawn? No.
So you wouldn't take the time to defend it or move it?
Well... as you know, I don't count pawns. I mean, but
Yeah.
very frankly, the problem here is that there is no real convenient way of defending it. If we play something along the last, play something along the lines of a5, then this knight comes here. Can that knight come here? Yes, that knight can come here. Then we need to figure out how to defend this thing, and then this and this. Is there a better way of defending it? I don't see it.
No, it's true that this is basically the one way in which the pawn can stay alive. He did play it though, I guess more, not so much for the pawn, but the fact that once white takes, the bishop is hanging too. So it's not only the pawn, but that white will take it with a tempo and start annoying our bishop, plus that will create a fast pawn. So he played a5, and even if he's gonna lose that pawn, it's just to make it more difficult for white to take it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay. And it's not like this is a dynamic position in which every tempo counts.
Yeah, because we want to attack on the king side, and that will happen later. But at the moment, there's nothing concrete. Karana played rook f1 to protect the f2 square, to free possibly the queen, and later the knight coming to c4 as you already projected. What's next? How can we start building up attack on the king side?
Well, there is, I think this knight move is still very much in play.
So that's one of the options. Any other ideas?
Okay. Well, we always have an option of bringing some pawns, so playing something like g5, and pushing pawns in addition to this, and maybe taking pawn on h3 as a target. And this is a position that, very frankly, I actually enjoy playing because it's fairly straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
It's not doesn't really have a multitude of plans. Yeah. So the question is, if you're asking me what did Grishchuk play, I'm pretty sure he would play something like h6 g5 at some point, maybe even right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a perfectly rational plan.
Yes.
And
Very
then
good job.
after g5, if knight c4, then we play knight on g6, and then we solidify the defense of this pawn. And there, this pawn is not really a direct weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think g5, and with the plan after knight c4, you play knight g6 makes sense.
Yeah. Very good job. G5 is what he played, and then the knight can come to G6 without blocking the pawn, because this pawn can be useful in the attack,
Yeah.
whether G4 or knight H4. Nicely done. That's what he played. And now knight to C4. What shall we do?
Okay. Well, we need to defend this pawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
That's more of a priority than the A5 pawn.
yeah, I would think. I
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Correct.
I think we. I think this pawn is really indefensible, because how are we going to defend it? We can play knight c6, but then we don't have the firepower to attack here. We need a
True.
knight on this side. So yeah, and playing something like bishop b6 sacrifice the core piece of our attack. So knight g6.
Exactly. Correct decision. Knight c6, as you said, would protect both pawns, but then our attack will not be as strong without the knight. So Givshuk is offering the a5 pawn, and it's much better to lose it this way, as if we compare it to the other line where earlier the pawn was hanging. That was gonna be the queen capturing it with a tempo.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of difference when it comes to, yeah, we lose the pawn, but knight takes a5 doesn't attack anything, and it's gonna take a move or two for white to bring that knight back into action, because now on the edge of the board it's blocking the pass pawn. If this was gonna happen, knight takes a5, how would you continue? What would have been the idea of Grishuk, you think?
Okay. Well, we can play h5. We can play knight h4. I kind of think that playing h5 is more in tune with this position. I mean, some jumps on the line of knight c6, it's really not that much of a threat, because we play bishop c5 and that knight is out of play. There is nothing there for white. And this pawn needs 4 moves to get there, get to a promotion. So I think we have a little bit of time. So I would probably play h5 in this position.
H5 is one of the options, and another one, even more straightforward, is
g4 immediately, as Spectre139 is saying. That makes sense. Hello, Chess Barbie. It's very good to see you here. Thank you for joining us.
G4. And what would be a possible line, a continuation of the G4 for white?
Well, that knight is limited in where it can go. I think, I think taking it is not almost forced, because if the knight moves, first if it moves on d2, this pawn falls, so it's knight h2 or knight e1. In either case, we're going to take on h3 and white is busted.
Yeah, let's play that out and show it on the board for everybody as well.
Okay, so this, you want me to remove the knight here, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and now what? You know, something like this. It's just, you know, it's not, you know, I'm just playing moves, and now this pawn is threatened,
Mm-hmm.
and I would love to play this position as black in any day of the week. That this is just a crushing position.
It is. It is. And if that pawn was taken after g4, h takes, rook takes, what's the issue here for white?
The issue here is that this knight is all of a sudden pinned.
Yes. It is pinned, and if the king steps out, let's just do it blindfold without moving the pieces. If white plays king h1 to make sure the knight is not hanging, what's the
Okay,
follow-up?
sure. King h1, we can play knight f4.
Yeah,
And
we can
then
play
we're
knight
taking
f4.
on g2, and it's basically curtains.
It is. So in this moment, that knight is hanging, and if king h1 to step out of the pin, we can play knight f4 immediately, or we can also swap the move order because knight f4 is coming regardless. This is curtains. It's curtains. For that reason, white does not have time to take the pawn because g4 is too strong. g4 is too strong. What shall white do? Now that we know what's the issue, what do you think Caruana played with the white pieces instead of the capture?
Okay. Alright, I'm gonna indulge myself and I'm gonna flip the board again.
Yes, yes, take your time.
I really like the black position here, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So looking at the immediate candidate moves, this appears to be reasonably strong because it blocks this bishop and it kind of guards against this. So that's one. I mean, knight h2, I think black can actually, cannot, because this, is this a good move? Well, if knight h2, then, you know, we need to counter h5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think h5 is a natural response to either of these two knight moves. Because it prevents knight g4 and it adds another pawn to the attack. I would play knight e3, Anna.
Yeah, no, knight e3 definitely is one of the best moves for white. As you said, you need to stop g4.
Yeah.
White cannot allow that. So knight e3, or the move that Fabiano played, same idea, different knight. He played knight h2. I think knight e3 seemed a little more active, but this also makes sense that he still is attacking the pawn, and the knight could come to g4. Knight h2. What's next for black?
Well, I think if we allow knight g4, we are if black allows knight g4, and let me flip. Oh, no, don't do that. Sorry. Oh God, Nikola. Sorry about that.
Take your time.
we don't want to allow knight to g4 because if we allow e5 pawn to fall, then we're in a little bit of a trouble. Hey, Rashilop, thank you for the follow. That's very greatly appreciated, my friend. Thank you. So I think h5 is, you know, a natural good move. The problem is that it's technically, can white take on h5?
That is the question, right? Can it be taken?
Okay, so let's calculate. Takes, we can actually take with a, can we, so it's three, there are four attackers and 4 defenders, right? Actually, there are only 3 defenders if the queen is here.
Yes.
The only problem is, are we allowing at some point this knight to be taken? But on the other hand, this is a check. Yeah, we can, because we can take on f2, right?
So what you're saying is that black can play h5 because if the queen takes it,
we have to take with the bishop. Yeah.
Exactly, check, and it cannot be taken. After h5, can you spot any other alternative for white? Anything that could be annoying for black?
No, g3 is moderately annoying.
Yes. Why is it annoying?
Because the rook on f4 has nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's trapped. As nice as it was, that triple heavy piece setup on the f file, it's now not going anywhere. The rook is trapped and we are losing material.
Yeah. And with that, rook really has nowhere useful to go. And yeah. Sorry.
So as awkward as it looked that the knight moved to h2, it looks like a passive move, but for the viewers too, I want to highlight how important is it to always analyze the pros and cons of each move and what changes in the position, because that knight was always hanging on f3. White could never touch the g pawn. But now that it's not on f3, actually the biggest threat is not knight g4 but g3, trapping the rook.
Yep. So what do we do here?
Sorry, I'll just promote this one and go back to the position after knight h2. What shall we play?
We can't take on f2. We can't put, if we take, we can't push g4. If we want to free a space, we need to play queen f7, and the problem with queen f7 is that the queen there doesn't defend the pawn on e5 anymore. And we really want to maintain the battery, but we can't maintain the battery. Okay, so to listen to the Ricky and Sleeping Mishkin, I think we need to so this is actually a pretty interesting move, because if on g3 we take on h3 and it's amusing. Top of it, actually, if you ever play h5, it's defended. My apologies, guys. Thank you, Anna. And what's funny is that I don't see any other move.
So rook h4.
Okay.
And the idea is that then g3, the pawn on h3 is hanging, and if not g3, then knight f4 is a threat. I think this would have been one of the one of the best options for black. I honestly like a lot rook h4, as strange as it is for the placement of the rook, but it seems to be working. And it vacates the f4 square for the knight, as you
Okay.
guys have said in the chat. Well done.
So what did so Grishuk didn't play Rook H4? What else
No,
is there to be played?
he played a more passive move, which for that reason, I don't think it can be the best option because he just basically admitted that he'll need to regroup his pieces and bring the rook back if g3.
Okay.
So I think rook h4 was the most active way of countering the threat of g3. Queen g7 was played instead, and after queen d3, he now played knight h4,
Okay.
which is again not the best move. That's why I didn't ask you to find it, because apparently it wasn't among the best moves. Um,
If you
of
guys haven't
course.
noticed, Anna is asking me to find better moves than a pair. I think they're are they both over 2800? I know Fabiano is.
um, yes, to 2800. That's Mr. Caruana, and Grishuk. I think was very close to 2800, but I don't think he crossed it. I might be wrong. Do let
Okay.
us know.
Very
Do
good.
let us know if he crossed it, but he was close to it.
Thank you, Anna. That's all right. So
He
okay.
has been over 2800 too. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
Sleeping Mishkin.
oh,
I
thank you,
didn't know if
Sleeping
only
Machine.
in Blitz or classical too.
Thanks, Dutch Day. Exactly. Okay. But this is a very interesting position, and I'm actually very grateful, Anna, for showing this because I'm gonna. Oh, so Grishuk was 2810 peak in classical. There you go.
Oh,
Okay. Um, okay. So, what did do you want me to tell you what I would play as Fabiano in this position, or
yes. Yeah. Now let's think of it from White's perspective. And what's going on after knight h4? So what is it that Black wants to do? Are there any direct threats?
okay? Well, what is the direct threat? The direct threat is G. I mean, okay, one possible threat is to play this and this, or play just g4 immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm not sure knight g2 as a sacrifice actually works. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, thanks, worship, my friend. That's very greatly appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, so I mean, okay, so the candidate move is knight g4 and, you know, try to grab this pawn.
Mm-hmm.
This knight in c4 is a little bit out of it. That's one active plan.
Mm-hmm.
Does g3 work? Probably not. Because all right, let me calculate real quick. So g3, rook f3, for example, just thinking loud. Queen moves, rook g3, and that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so g3 obviously doesn't work. Knight g4 doesn't have an immediate counter. It would be nice to play king h1 and f3, but we don't have time for it. I don't think we have any more active plan than playing knight g4.
Knight g4 is exactly what Fabiano played. And the engine says it's all right, but it's not the best. Because the engine is greedy, and the engine says White could have just taken the pawn. So the world number two played knight g4. Well done, Nikola. I think that's the human move. But the engine is just totally not caring about the kingside initiative and says, this is a free pawn, this is a passed pawn, and takes it. Then brings the knight back and starts pushing the pawn, not caring about the kingside. Knight g4 is way more human, and that's what Fabiano played. So we're
Okay.
gonna focus on this move. What's next? What do we play as black?
Okay. Well, the question here is, what do we do with this pawn?
Mm-hmm.
And what our options are basically to let it go, which is fine. And our options of defending it are actually somewhat slim pickings. We really don't want to bring the knight back here to defend the pawn.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have any other way of defending that pawn. Going into wilderness along the lines of rook f3, I think doesn't work. Probably wouldn't even work in a bullet game. So I think we need to let go. Sorry. So h5. We don't have a firepower to take this.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't.
I'm gonna put knight g6 as a potential option just for sanity's sake. And it may actually not be a bad move. And I don't see anything else on it.
Yeah, those are the main options. And as you said, it's likely that we shouldn't care too much about the pawn. The a5 pawn was already hanging, so who cares about the e5 pawn now? h5 is what Rishuk played, allowing knight takes e5. What's next?
Yeah, thank you, Sleeping Mishkin. Appreciate that. All right. Hey, Kiwi4. It's very good to see you. All right, so thank you, Kiwi4 for the follow. Greatly appreciated. Well, we can proceed with g4.
Yep, most straightforward.
That's the most straightforward move because we are threatening g3, which is actually pretty nasty. What else
is
do
it the
we
move
have?
you would play, or any other moves that come to mind?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not
g4.
Really. G4. I mean, we sacrifice the pawn on e5 to play this.
Exactly. Now let's flip the board and see what white should do after g4.
Okay, now guys, this is officially torture. This flip the board and what do you play as white? It's actually really interesting exercise. Okay. All right, what do I play here? Yeah, that's Spectre. It's hey, Just on Earth, my friend. It's very good to see you. Thank you for being here. Anna and I are having an EU friendly stream. Well, knight e3 would be a beautiful move if that wouldn't blunder the knight on e5. All right, so what are the immediate threat? The immediate threat is g3. I'm not necessarily worried of gh3 because we're going to take it with a queen, and that's scary, but actually that is still, yeah, he can't. Hold on a second. Yeah, worship, that's a viable option. I'm just looking here, assuming that black is black to move. If we take, and then we take here, then we take here, and takes, and that doesn't work very well for us, does it? So we need to play g3, and then that gives us this, and then rook g3. Ooh, we are actually in bigger trouble. White is in bigger trouble than I thought. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Queen g3 is a viable option. So that's may actually work, because that's one way to stop the gh3. Another option, I'm actually not sure. I actually like Worship's idea of playing queen d7. That may actually even work. Because then that's another way of stopping gh3. And I honestly don't see anything else.
So let's go through them move by move, option
Okay.
by option. Queen d7, let's start with that one. Flipping the board. What do we do after queen d7?
Okay. Yeah, the problem with rook f7 is that we lose that knight on e5 all of a sudden became a monster. And the problem is that, you know, if we play something silly like queen g5, then this is nasty. Okay, so we don't want to allow that. So what's the counter here? The potential counter is to play. Yeah, Dutch. We really don't want to exchange queens here. So I guess we play queen f6. That counters our immediate threats.
Exactly. So we avoid the trade of queens, and we avoid the pawn on e6 being captured with a check.
And then we are actively threatening to take on f2 and win.
Yes.
All right,
We're threatening to take on f2, we're threatening to take on h3. Even if it's not winning a pawn anymore, that will expose the white king.
Yeah.
Very good job. This position, do you think you could hold this if it comes to defending with the white pieces?
She's really enjoying this, isn't she?
I am. So let's try to survive from white's perspective. You can flip the board.
All right. Sure. All right. Okay. Whew. Okay, so something like this comes to mind. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Dirkie, exactly. The problem is that then this is a little dangerous. Or is it? Or black can even take. I mean, the material is basically equal, right? White has an extra pawn.
Yeah, it's an extra pawn.
So the problem here is that after knight d3, black can basically just play rook e4. Can it? No. Interesting. Okay, so here is an interesting idea. Knight d3. Can we play rook f3? The idea being that takes queen h, queen g5, and that's a mate. Okay. Oh boy, this position you can shave with. Yeah, I don't think this works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it actually fails to rook f3. Now, if this was a classical game, I'd have enough time to calculate, so I'll spare you guys that exercise. But my intuition is telling me that white is winning after rook f3.
The black is winning.
Black is winning. Yeah, my bad.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, rook f3 is a very appealing move, and your intuition usually is very strong, and it's the case here as well. You can also, if you don't want to go into that mess, you can also just take the pawn on e4, attack the knight,
Yeah.
and so we are just renewing the same threats. But rook f3 is most likely one of the most aggressive approaches. This, in any case, is a disaster for white. So
we can stop that queen d7. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, queen d7, unfortunately, for white isn't helping. It helps momentarily to deal with g takes h3. Let me go back to that moment. So this is where we start, and this is the main threat. But queen d7, unfortunately, doesn't help.
No. Thank you, Worship. No, it was a perfectly fine and a legitimate move. Thank you for bringing it up. It was a viable option. It's not like my bad that white has that many viable options in this position as it is. So we have threats of here, and we need to stop them. So another option that has been suggested was to play queen g3.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a better move, probably. It's a viable. All right.
So queen g3, what do you think black should do?
Well, we don't want to exchange queens. So, although, you know what? Yeah, rook f3 doesn't work because it takes, and then if we take, actually we can take with another rook. But then he can take with a knight. And then we give this a check, but I don't see we have enough firepower to deliver a mate, do we?
Do we have or do we not have?
Okay, so let me think. So queen g3, rook f3, takes with a pawn, takes with a, I guess, second rook. Okay, takes with a knight. And then we capture with a knight with a check. And the only move is king h1. Okay. And then we play, ooh, is h4 nice nasty there? H4 is nasty, what does, and then we play g3, and we're actually winning.
Would you like to play that out on the board and
Yeah.
show the viewers what you calculated?
Yeah, whoa, all right. I missed, we can take on g4 with a check, that's the problem. So that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, so brute force approach is not, oops, doesn't seem to be working.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we have? But here is a real question, and just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
We can just do this.
Yeah. And what happens after? What do you think here's the best move for white? I'm not gonna say it.
Okay, so that means watch what you're doing.
No. This is of course one of the most critical lines, but I was gonna play the move for white, and I think I should just make you flip the board if you want to.
Okay, well, I'm about to play Botta's Gambit here because of this guy, and if I play this, then
Mm-hmm.
this is not this. Sorry, not, then what? Um, Instead of gh3, rook e4 may be an issue. But let me actually find. No, we don't want this line. Sorry. Okay, so if we do this, and this is the best line, right? Especially since this thing is being threatened.
Mm-hmm.
We have this, and this is nasty. This is the nasty line, right?
Yeah, well done. So knight f3, king h1 would lose the queen. What shall I do after knight f3 for that reason?
Well, we need to take.
Yeah, what happens then?
Now we can just do this, and we are winning. Black is winning.
Black is winning in this case. Anything else after rook takes f3? What can white do? So white has to take the knight. So queen h3. Sorry, queen h3, knight f3, knight takes, rook takes. What shall I do here?
Well, there is this.
Mm-hmm. What's going on in this position? What do you think?
Now the question here is, do we allow? I mean, this is a threat. I mean, if we play king h8, we're allowing this.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to play this, or even, rook f7 would. Okay. And now what does white have? Okay. Hey, Lally. Thanks. Okay, so what's the best way to defend this position?
Mm-hmm. What's the threat of black? Do we have a direct threat, or does the white have time?
Okay, so I don't see a direct threat, or I might be blind. But
no, that's correct. There's no direct threat.
But truth be told, this is such a dominant position for black that just strengthening it normally or play, it's. Yeah. The threat is that, something like this is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
and we can only give, white can only give one check and then nothing, and then this is actually directly under attack, and it's not immediately obvious how white can defend it.
Yeah.
And this knight, this queen, from a standpoint of defense, is actually severely misplaced. Hey, thank you, Matt. Thank you for the follow. Very greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
So what do you think white should do to have some chance of survival? As you said, that queen is not well placed on e6.
I don't think we have time to bring the queen back, or I don't see how we can bring it back to defend f2, or even to defend g3. I mean, oh, well, we can try something like, oh yeah, that's Bottas Gambit, sorry. We can try something like this. Sorry, let me actually draw an arrow. Which is a somewhat concrete threat. And I actually don't see anything else.
Yeah.
I really don't.
It's not an easy position for white.
No.
It just feels like even though white has been capturing a pawn here and there, black's pieces are so active. And it's just very, very difficult to rely on only one piece. Sorry, not queen e5, but queen d5 to attack the h5 pawn would be perhaps the most resilient for white. But even then, I think in a practical game, this is a very good chance for black to win, for the fact that all the black pieces are attacking.
Sure.
And you can't always play the top move of the engine when it comes to defending a position like this. So I think in practice, this is a great chance. And this all comes from the position after queen to g3, g takes h3. Interestingly, what happened in the game, let's go back, because of course this didn't happen.
Hey, Pizza Racer, my friend, it's very good to see you. Feel free to lurk in the background. I do the
what
same.
What happened in the game? Yeah. Here after g4, I guess, well, actually not. I think it makes sense. Yes, I thought it was a line that I was confused with, but now that we have looked at queen g3 and this capture, how annoying the position is, even if we give white some of the rest of the pawns. So because of these lines, I'm guessing the reasoning for Karana to take first was that line, that specific position with g takes h3. So he took on g4, and after h takes g4 is now the moment for him to play queen g3, and it makes sense. It makes sense that he doesn't allow.
That's an improvement. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what shall we do from black's perspective?
Well, first, don't blunder the knight.
Yeah, important. How not to blunder it. What shall we do?
Yeah, as Sleepy Mishkin asked, let's flip the board.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's think. All right, so brute force approach is this. Unfortunately, rook f3 no longer works. Right? No, it doesn't. The question is, yeah, I think the knight f3 is too direct. If we exchange queens, we're basically busted. What else do we have? All right. Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly the sleeping mishki what I'm looking for. Another option is to first play queen g5 and then play rook from 8 to f6, just so we understand this. We can play this,
Mm-hmm.
and then if takes, then we can play g3, and then we're threatening to play rook h6, and
Mm-hmm.
that's actually
And the pawn, can it be taken? Can the pawn on g3 be taken?
by the queen. No.
Yeah, very good. So this is a really interesting option
Yeah.
to sacrifice the knight, because if g3, well spotted, very good job.
Well,
It cannot be taken.
Sleeping with Mishkin deserves credit. He spotted it first in chat.
Cannot be taken, and if it's not possible to take it, then white will be in trouble once the rook comes to the h file. The queen is trapped. The queen would be trapped. Really interesting move. Rook to f6, rook f8 to f6, meaning that the knight cannot be taken. There should be different options here for white that will keep the game going. Let's see what could we come up with for white as an option. But it's true, the knight is untouchable.
Okay. Flipping yet again. All right, so the direct threat here is there are actually plenty of direct threats. Wow. Okay. All right, so I think we considered this move several times before.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that move is the knight f3 is almost a direct win.
Yep, very good job.
So that doesn't work. However, now this rook obstructs this, so it might be possible to. I'm sorry, Anna. I wanted to draw another.
No worries.
It might be possible to play this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Problem, actually, is it playable?
Good question.
All right. So takes, because obviously if we take, we are gonna lose a rook.
Mm-hmm.
So takes. Now what? Now this pawn is no longer pinned. Hey, just a quick shout out to my dear friend and coach Mark Esserman, who has just joined us. Hey Mark, I'm being tortured by Anna here. It's very good to see you. Shout out to Mark Esserman. He is an international master, very strong player, and her streams are usually late at night on his channel that are very high level and very, very educational. Okay, so what's
our conclusion?
the conclusion is I think rook f3 must be winning here, and it probably is. Right. This takes, we have rook g6 even to grab the queen. And there are mating threats galore. So
it's true that rook f3 seems to be very powerful, but it may allow something that earlier was an issue for white.
All right, let's see.
Our tactical motive.
Okay.
Oh, you meant with that move order. Okay, now I understand. Sorry, I thought you meant immediate rook f3.
No.
Yeah, the capture.
Yeah.
No, this definitely. Okay. Do not allow queen takes h4.
Yeah.
Excellent. I misunderstood your move order.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah, this would be just a disaster once again for white, because if you can't take it, the queen has to retreat to d2 or play queen d4, but the attack goes on the king side. I think in a practical game, once again, this is just so difficult to defend against. So the best suggestion of the engine after rook f6, just so that we learn something from it, was, I believe, rook to d2 to bring the rook into the game, threatening a back rank check, and rook d7 at the same time. So this would be double-edged. Now suddenly white also has some threats, and our back rank has been opened up. If we bring the rook back to the back rank, then the knight is hanging. So it actually is not so simple to get out of this.
Okay.
And I think that's the reason why perhaps rook f6 is not the best, but a very interesting line. And in a practical game, anything could happen. So this is just to learn a little bit from the engine too. But in a practical game, I fully agree. This is super sharp and difficult for white to defend against. After queen g3 in the game, Grishuk simply defended the knight. I think this was also suggested by Worship in the chat.
Yep.
Very logical move. Protects the knight, and the queen is active on g5. Queen g5, rook e2. What shall we do as next step for black?
All right, we're black again. All right. I'm curious about rook e2, but that's... All right, so I guess he's defending pawn on e4. Which is actually a little bit tricky because those two knights are troubled. All right, and also rook e4, knight f5, then g3 is a nasty sequence. Okay, understand that. My apologies.
No worries.
Okay, so what can we do here? I'm sorry, guys. We just need to see who that was because
no worries. I know you're busy.
They're calling twice. No, it's nothing important. Okay. So white is defending everything here. Pawn on f2 is overprotected. One disadvantage of queen g5 is that queen is actually undefended. So something forced along the lines of knight f3 doesn't work, or does it? No, it doesn't. Because they're... Okay. So f3 is defended by 3 pieces. And it's attacked 4 times. The only problem is that the last defender is pinned. . Yeah, it's sleeping Mishkin. I think knight f3 is. We need if we if we had one less defender, knight f3 is a crashing move. Agreed. I was even looking at knight g2, but that doesn't work. Well, can we play knight rook f6 now?
And what's the difference with the other line that we looked at? With that queen g5, remember when we were looking at this immediately? What was the issue here?
The issue here is that rook d1, rook d2 is nasty. And
yes.
now it's not nasty, so yes, so we can play rook f6 now.
Excellent. Very good. That after queen g3, queen g5, rook e2, now this idea is actually very strong, bringing the rook over to the h5, renewing all those threads that we looked at, and rook d2. Well, white can still try to do it, but it's not the same scenario anymore, and the knight is already protected. So this is the strongest, and I think a very promising attack. I'm surprised that Grishuk didn't play it, but at this stage, it probably was already just the peak of the time pressure. Once again, it was either rapid or blitz, but by move 30, whether it's rapid or blitz, you normally don't have time at all. You don't have time. So at this stage, it's blitz, final minutes of the game, that is for sure. He played, instead of the rook move, which I think is the strongest, so well done, he just played king g7, which is to bring the rook into the game, but through the back rank, rook h8. It's interesting. And the same idea. You need the rook on the h file in many of the positions, but it perhaps wasn't the most accurate. Caruana played knight to d3 to attack the rook on f4, after which, what would you play, Nikola?
Haven't we already looked at this and we concluded that after this rook f3 is crushing?
Yep, we have concluded that.
Yeah.
Rook f3, and if it's taken,
then it's knight f3.
Knight
no,
f3.
sorry. No, we can take with hold on.
Yeah, knight f3 or rook f3, because both are promising.
Knight f3 is, hold on.
Take your time.
No, we don't want to mess up this position. If we take with a rook, then there is this queen c7 check, which is moderately annoying. Rook f3, king g2. Thank you, Leaf Nut, for the follow. Okay. Rook g2, queen.
King g2.
King g2. Rook h8, rook h1. We are not mating. Right. I mean, there must be a mate here, right? So we can. So what we're gonna take with rook on f3.
Rook takes.
Okay.
And then
queen c7, I guess. Because whatever white plays, we can. Yeah. We're gonna play rook f7. I mean, we need to
defend. Rook
defend.
f7.
Yeah.
Would this be your choice? Now blindfold rook f7 or moving the king?
Okay, where can we move the king? That's useful. We need g6 is battery of knights. f6 is e5. So h8 follows, will subject us to more checks, so we can play h6. Okay.
So would you go for a king move or would you play rook f7?
I think we're playing g3 in the next move, right?
Yeah, that's what I would like to do.
Okay, so let's assume that we're gonna play king h6 here.
Yeah, because what's the issue with rook f7? There's something wrong with rook f7.
Okay, what's wrong with rook f7? What's wrong with rook f7 is... well, he can repeat the position.
And other than repeating the position, if white wants to play for a win, what
then
can
there
they
is
play?
queen e5, and we're exchanging queens.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad.
So unfortunately, after sacrificing the rook, we don't want to allow this. Why is queen e5 not an issue immediately?
Good question. Okay, so queen e5, because we're gonna mate on, because we have a mating sequence, right? Let me. All right, so we're gonna we take, we give a check on d3, we give a check on h3. Right. Is there a mating sequence that I'm not seeing?
Is there mate or is it perpetual? Or neither?
All right, so it's rook g3. We can't give a check on f3, which would be necessary for the mating sequence. But after king h2, tactics, right? I actually don't see a mate, which is annoying, and it's probably on me. Let's see.
Let's play at those moves and see if there's actually a mate or not.
All right, so this, I don't think it matters which knight takes, right?
It's the same.
Yeah, all right. I mean, we have perpetual, or do we? Yeah, we do. I don't see a mate.
No, there is unfortunately no mate, but we are also not losing the game. So the big difference between queen e5 immediately, or queen takes c7, and then after rook f7, if we play rook f7, queen e5, that's winning for white.
Yeah.
With the rook on f3, it's a draw.
Okay.
So king h6 has to be played, and then it's still a mess of a position. We have given up a rook, but it's a very promising attack.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to the game because I know that you are also on a strict schedule.
Yeah, I have a hard stop in about 15 minutes, unfortunately. It's fine.
Yes, no worries, because we are close to the end of the game for once. For once, we are actually pretty close to the key moment. So after, let me go back to knight d3. Rishuk actually didn't go for the sacrifice, but he went back to f6 with the rook. Caruana took on c7. Reminder, they were already in the heat of the time trouble at this stage, so these are not the best moves for either player. The rook comes back to f7 now, and queen e. Wait, oh, am I showing the right position? 1 second. 93 back. Oh yeah, sorry, it was the other rook. Because if queen e5, that's bad. We need to keep this here so that this is not checked. Okay. Apologies, it's this rook.
No, okay, no, that makes more sense. I was just wondering.
No, queen e5 couldn't be a check because we don't want to trade queens. So if we don't want to trade queens, what do we do here? Where to place the queen?
Okay. So we are down 2 pawns, right?
Yeah, only 2 pawns.
What's our options? We can go on h6, we can go on g6. And that's those are about the options. Right. If it's on g6, we're threatening g3. If it's on h6, we're not threatening g3. On the other hand, if we go on h6, we're threatening to take on g2 with a knight. And that's actually quite nasty.
So which one would you go for by intuition?
I think g3 is a more concrete threat, so I would probably go to g6.
Queen g6. Now, is there anything wrong with queen g6?
Good question. Okay, I'm not seeing any knight moves that are relevant. I'm not seeing any pawn moves that are relevant.
Double check them.
Okay. All right, so there is only one move that's actually meaningful in this position. This thing, none of these pawns can move, so we're looking at this. If we go on h6, then we are threatening of a mate on g2. The thing is that this can defend it. But will black have...
So you're saying after queen g6?
But this, yeah. But on the other hand, if we do what I'm saying is, this is the only pawn move.
Is that a good pawn move?
But that's not a good pawn move, because
That's not.
that's a very nice Bottas gambit, so forget about it.
So g3 fails to knight f3.
Yeah, so we can't move any of the pawns.
How about other pieces?
Yeah, all right. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Huh. All right. Let me be amused and try and see if I can play king h1.
Does that refute queen g6 though? Because it feels the issue
It
is
does refute. Yeah, it does. That's the refutation right there. Wonderful. Okay, thanks.
It was brilliant. So,
yeah.
what's the issue with queen g6? There's something concrete for white, an attacking plan, tactical motives. We are losing
it's
material.
not king h1?
No, it was beautiful, but unfortunately,
it's not. Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. Attacking plan for white. All right, so the only attacking plan for white... Well, let me put it this way. With king on g6, this is a viable option. Right?
I mean, knight e3.
Yeah.
Is there anything better than knight e3? Something more concrete?
Okay. More concrete is knight d6. And I don't see anything else.
Take a look at the rest of the squares too.
Okay. All right, so we have this. Okay. Oh, yeah, what we are, but I'm not seeing how that makes a difference. Maybe
Which one?
we can even do this.
Any other knight moves? I
Okay.
think you showed all squares but that one. If I didn't miss the moment when you clicked on that square.
All right.
So
So okay. So I don't see it then as obviously. So but let me think for a second. Knight e3 is knight d2 and knight b2 make no sense. Taking the pawn. Okay. No. Knight b6 is not an option. Knight d6 is interesting. All right. The other knight options is knight c5, which do not make sense.
any other square?
For this knight, knight f4 is pinned. Duh, my bad. Oh yeah, that's the move.
Yeah, that's the issue, unfortunately.
Sorry,
So
brain
it's
dead.
okay.
Brain dead after 2 hours of torture.
That's normal. That's normal. It always happens by the end of the sessions that something basic
Yeah.
um will let it be slip through, but
Yeah.
it's okay because it's just because we have been here for so long and I know that it's tiring. But yeah, knight f4 is a winning move for white because then there's knight h5 check, picks up material, and we don't get mated. So that's the reason why after queen e5, queen h6 is stronger, controls the f4 square, and the attack goes on. So this is a really promising, should be a winning attack, decisive attack for black. Well done. Let's go back to the game because we need
Thank you
to
guys, you're very
stop
kind.
shortly.
And yeah, I mean 2 hours with board flipping is interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's interesting. Yeah. All right, my
So,
bad.
yeah, sorry, not this one. I should eliminate this from the delete. Move.
I'm sorry, guys. My phone
This
is
rook
ringing, but
here, queen here. This is the game.
okay.
And after queen g3, what's next?
Okay.
We are looking for a very strong move, but
Yeah.
surprising one.
Okay. All right, so the pawn on f2 is overprotected.
It is.
So that eliminates all the thing. If we do the I think we have concluded that rook on f3 is a dead end. Knight on f3 is actually very interesting because it forces the capture with a pawn. The problem, it would be nice if this pawn wasn't pinned. So, okay. In other words, if the king was on h8, right, this would be winning.
Correct.
Okay. So can we actually play king h8 or king h7 might be more precise because we don't want to pin the rook. Huh. Okay. And we cannot do this because then we don't have firepower. And the problem if we play king h7 on h file, this may actually save the day. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we play here?
What was this with king h8? Or you said it was king h8, queen h2, or king h7, queen h2?
Well, in both cases, this is.
Are you sure in both cases it's
in
annoying
both
queen
cases,
h2?
but that doesn't really prevent knight on f3 check, takes. Huh. All right. Interesting. Okay. We cannot play rook g6.
So we're not looking at the king moves anymore.
Well,
because one of the king moves you mentioned is a winning move.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No, the idea
it's a brilliant move.
No, we need to prepare this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for that reason, the king has to be moved out of the g file.
Yes.
So which one is the right square?
The rights, if we go to h8, then this pins the rook.
Is that a disaster?
No. And there are no checks.
Yeah, because the bishop on a7 is very useful guarding the ba square.
Yes, there are no checks. Actually, there are no checks in either case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so let's eliminate. The queen g6 and queen g8 don't make sense. King f8 fails to queen d6.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally the choice between king h7 and king h8. All right, guys. So which
one is the winning move?
Which one is the winning move?
Final task.
The final task. Okay. Yeah, I see what the difference is. The difference is white can play knight e5. And if you play knight e5, that attacks this rook, and it can take the rook with a check if the king is on h8. Is that it?
But maybe you have a different winning line after that. If not knight f3 there, but something else.
Yeah. Okay.
So king h8. And what's the winning move after knight d or knight c e5? What's the winning move here?
I'm gonna take on f2 with the. Can I take on f2? Yeah, I can take on f2.
You sure?
No, actually. Yeah, I see the difference. Yeah, my bad. Sorry, I'm stupid. Yeah,
king h. My
bad. No, it's. I actually, I'm actually very happy that Anna is doing this with me because I'm gonna need to be able to practice my mental stamina. The difference is that I have rook h7.
And then knight f3 will
knight f3 wins.
close the curtain.
That's the end of it. Yeah.
Very good job. King h8, winning move. And the same thing with queen h2. If the king was on h7, queen h2 would be some kind of a defense, but with the king on h8, you have rook h7 again. So it's always the same And other than that, knight f3 and the g file opens up checkmate in a few moves. Very good job, Nikola. I know you will need to leave
I
soon,
actually,
so
thank you, Anna. I actually need to leave. I have, unfortunately, a meeting with like 7 people in 3 minutes.
well,
I need
then
to
let's
go.
wrap up because we will also need to rate someone, and that's an
Yeah.
important part of the show.
Yes. So who are we rating? And I'm gonna just do one quick thing here. All right. So guys, first and foremost, thank you for being here. It was fun. I'm glad that we had a European friendly stream. Anna, you are not gonna continue to stream, right?
No, no, no. It's also been a long day for me.
Okay. So let's see. You know what? Let's have some fun times and raid Hikaru. All
Good
right.
choice.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you guys. He is actually got him there when playing chess. So thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Wish me luck. On Sunday I'm playing Adriana Nikolova, WGM from Bulgaria. I'm genuinely hoping to survive that unadopted and we'll go there. Thank you, Turning Strider. Thank you, Dirke. Thank you, Sleeping Mishkin. Thank you guys for being here. And Anna, again, thank you so much. And we are sending a raid to Hikaru.
See you guys next week.
See you guys next week. Okay.